It's been about a year since Kirkwood's Eric Schmitt was appointed Attorney General of Missouri, an office that's been a stepping stone for a number of Missouri politicians. He sat down with 5 on Your Side's Mike Bush to talk about his first year in office.
And joining me now is Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmitt. It was just a few weeks ago that you announced and that your office discovered that close to 90% of Missouri rape kits have never been tested. 90%. That is a frightening statistic. So what are you guys doing about it?
Well, and to put that into real numbers, Mike, that's 6,000. Over 6,000 sexual assault kits have not been tested. And the really important thing that I think to keep in perspective is those aren't just numbers or footnotes in a criminal report. Those are real people who've had the courage to come forward. And so it's really driven, sort of the value statement that's driven this effort to get those kits tested ultimately, is we want to honor the courage of the victims who've come forward and submitted to those kits. And so the first phase of it was to get an inventory, which is where those numbers come from. We issued a detailed report. The second piece is to have a tracking system in place so that victims, law enforcement know where those kits are at each place in the process, so we don't have this issue again, and then ultimately move to testing. And so we have money for a preliminary round of testing that'll get us about a sixth of the way there, and we'll be continuing to look for additional funds to make sure we clear that backlog. So
what happens to a woman who has the courage to come forward now? Does that rape kit get in this backlog?
Yeah, so that, well, no, moving forward, there isn't a backlog. Okay. So if something is sort of, if someone comes forward now and submits, there isn't a backlog. This is really from the 1990s, the 2000s. That's really where this backlog really kind of came from, the genesis of it, and we want to move forward expeditiously to get those tested. And why we're also have a working group with victim advocate groups, law enforcement, so that as we do move forward, we want to make sure that that all the victims are represented and we're hearing them as the process moves forward.
We talked to you a few months ago about your Safer Streets initiative, the goal to reduce violent crime. I guess people are wondering if it's working because the murder rate is up in St. Louis.
Yeah, look, we got a lot of work to do. Typically what happens is, as the Attorney General's office, we have to be asked to come in by a local prosecutor. And that happens a lot, particularly in rural areas. We're asked to come in on capital cases or where we have some expertise. But where we know our resources can be utilized is with the U.S. Attorney's Office. So we have the first of its kind partnership in the country where we have lawyers from our office working with the U.S. Attorney here in the Eastern District in St. Louis. So we know that those lawyers are going to be used to prosecute crimes at the federal level where we know they have jurisdiction and the penalties can be stiffer. To date, those indictments are over 100 now, actually. And so we're focused in a laser-like manner on violent crime, Hayden's Rectangle, downtown, Dutchtown, working with the U.S. Attorney's Office. So we got a lot of work to do, but we're not going anywhere on this. It's a key initiative for us, and we want to be part of the solution.
But what do you tell people who just want to feel safe when they go shopping at the Galleria or they're walking downtown? What's your message to them?
Well, we want them to know that the Attorney General's Office stands with them and stands with victims, and we are going to prosecute violent criminals. We are prosecutors, and that's our job, and that's what we're going to do. It's also why we're advocating for a uniform carjacking statute, to make sure that if you even attempt a carjacking with a deadly weapon, you're going to go to jail for 10 years to life. It's also why we're standing with the men and women of law enforcement to lift the residency requirement so they can recruit more police officers.
Well, let's talk about that, because St. Louis police, they're more than 100 officers short. Mm-hmm. How do you convince the public that this should happen?
Well, it's the only police department in the whole region that has a residency requirement. And so we want to broaden that applicant pool. We know it leads to greater diversity. We know it leads to a broader universe of applicants. We also know that there are about 140 officers short now, but that doesn't tell the full story, Mike. In a couple of years, that number is going to double because of retirements that are coming. So we want to get ahead of this so that we have more officers on the street, and also know that that our office, the Attorney General's office, supports the men and women of law enforcement who do dangerous work every day.
The Circuit Attorney of St. Louis wants a new trial for a man named Lamar Johnson, who is in prison, according to Kim Gardner, for a murder he did not commit. A judge asked you to get involved. Where do you stand on this?
Well, we don't take any position on the guilt or innocence or the alleged new evidence. Our role was to come in and brief the court on the procedure. And the procedure by which the Circuit Attorney and the Midwest Innocence Project have entered into the case was improper. There is a way for Lamar Johnson to have that new evidence heard. It's by a habeas petition. That procedure wasn't followed in this case, and that's our involvement in the case that's on appeal right now.
Last April, you launched RealOpioidPain.com. You've been listening to opioid abuse survivors. What's your goal here?
Well, first of all, we wanted to listen. And what I've learned is that this epidemic knows no geographic boundaries, no race or sex or any of those distinctions don't matter when it comes to how opioid addiction has gripped this state in this country. 140 people die every day from opioid overdoses. That's like a plane going down every day of every week of every month. And if that was happening, we would galvanize our resources and do something about it. So we're committed to that. Now in Missouri, 1 in 65 deaths are related to opioid overdoses. So we have RealOpioidPain.com. We're moving forward with our lawsuit against the opioid manufacturers. And the nature of that claim essentially is that they misrepresented the addictive nature of these drugs. So we want to hold them accountable and provide relief for Missourians.
Let me give you some names. Josh Hawley, John Danforth, John Ashcroft, Jay Nixon. They were all Attorney General of Missouri, and they all went to higher office. Give me an idea of what the future looks like for Eric Schmitt.
I want to do a good job in this office that I'm in now. You know, I can thank my parents, Steve and Kathy Schmitt, you know, growing up in North County for a work ethic that I'm thankful for. I didn't know any lawyers growing up. I was the first person to go to law school in my family. So to be Attorney General now and the lawyer for 6 million Missourians, I'm extremely grateful for that opportunity, and I want to honor that opportunity by doing a good job.
So higher office is not on your radar right now?
My focus is doing a good job as Attorney General.
Well, happy holidays to you and your family. We really appreciate it.
Good to see you, Mike.
Always good to see you.
You too.
That's Eric Schmitt, Missouri's Attorney General, and we'll be right back.